I'm Hazel Mitchell, 27, sitting at my parents' mahogany table while they celebrate Amber's law school graduation. Dad hands her keys to a brand new BMW. Mom announces they're covering the down payment on her Manhattan apartment. Meanwhile, I worked 2 jobs to help Amber through school, something I mention quietly. Dad dismisses me with a wave. That was your choice. Mom nods. When I persist, Dad slams his glass down. Your sister was born to live soft. Don't like it? Leave. So I did leave and took everything with me. Before I dive into this story, where are you watching from today? If you're ready to hear how I turned my family's betrayal into my greatest strength, hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, what happened next changed everything. The favoritism in our family wasn't subtle. It was a constant, predictable pattern, as reliable as the seasons changing in our affluent Connecticut neighborhood. My father, Richard Mitchell, built his investment banking career on calculated risks and ruthless precision. My mother, Sarah, perfected her role as the socialite wife with the same dedication. And somewhere along the way, they decided Amber, 4 years younger than me, was their golden child. Our childhood home was a sprawling colonial with perfectly manicured lawns and a carefully curated interior that appeared in regional home magazines twice. It looked perfect from the outside. Inside, the divisions were clear from my earliest memories. When I was 12 and Amber 8, my parents announced she would attend Westridge Academy, a prestigious private school with annual tuition higher than many college programs. Amber needs the special attention. Mom explained when I asked why I would remain in public school. She's more sensitive. You've always been so independent. Independent wasn't a compliment. It was their code for, we don't need to worry about you. My Sweet 16 consisted of a family dinner at our kitchen table with store-bought cake. Amber's, 4 years later, featured a rented ballroom, professional decorator, and a guest list of 50. Dad hired her favorite band to play privately. I maintained a 4 gigapascals throughout high school, earned National Merit Scholar status, and captained the debate team to state championships. My achievements warranted polite nods or distracted "that's nice, dear" responses. When Amber brought home C grades, my parents hired expensive tutors and celebrated her improvements with lavish rewards. The summer before college, they took her to Europe for a month as motivation for trying harder after she barely passed pre-calculus. College continued the pattern. I secured a partial scholarship to State University and worked 20 hours weekly at the campus bookstore and another 15 at a local cafe to cover remaining expenses. My parents could have helped. Their financial statement on my aid application proved that, but we believe in building character, Dad told me. Meanwhile, Amber attended Cornell with full parental funding. She changed majors 3 times, took 5 years to graduate, and never held a job during that time. Her apartment near campus cost more in monthly rent than my entire semester's housing. Despite everything, I excelled. I graduated with honors in finance, secured an internship at Preston Financial Advisors through my own networking, and converted it to a full-time position. Within 3 years, I built a respectable client portfolio without leveraging my father's extensive connections. It's just money management. Mom commented when I was recognized in an industry publication for a successful investment strategy. Anyone can move numbers around. This came from a woman who had never balanced her own checkbook. The pattern continued even after I established my career. Every family gathering featured extended discussions about Amber's latest achievements getting into law school after I spent countless hours helping her study for the LSAT, making acquaintances with a professor's daughter, being invited to a classmate's beach house. My promotions, client acquisitions, and industry recognitions received passing acknowledgement, if mentioned at all, yet I still tried. I loaned Amber nearly $15,000 during her second year of law school when she complained about textbook costs and wanting to attend networking events. I spent weekends helping her prepare for exams, creating study guides, and reviewing her papers. I kept thinking if I just achieved enough, helped enough, proved myself enough, they would finally see me. The dinner celebrating Amber's graduation was supposed to be different. I'd just been nominated for a leadership position at my firm, the youngest person ever considered. I thought maybe, finally, they would be proud. Instead, I got the clearest message yet. Your sister was born to live soft. Don't like it? Leave. After 39 years of trying to earn the bare minimum of parental approval, something inside me finally snapped. The words echoed in my head as I drove home that night, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. For the first time, I stopped asking what I could do differently to make them love me. Instead, I began asking why I should continue protecting people who never protected me. The morning after that fateful dinner, I drove to my parents' house, knowing they would be taking Amber shopping for professional clothes for her new job at a prestigious law firm, a position secured through Dad's golf buddy. The house was silent as I used my key to enter. I hadn't come with a plan for revenge. Initially, I only wanted to collect old photos and mementos from my childhood bedroom that Mom had threatened to donate if you don't clear them out soon. Passing Dad's home office, I noticed the door ajar, unusual for a man obsessively private about his business dealings. A strange impulse made me peek inside. His desk was uncharacteristically messy, papers scattered across the surface as if he'd left in a hurry. A folder labeled HM. Accounts caught my eye, my initials. I'd never had an investment account with my father. Head made it clear that mixing family and business creates complications. Yet here was a folder with quarterly statements spanning the past 8 years, all addressed to me at an unfamiliar P.O. box. My hands trembled as I flipped through documents showing accounts, properties, and investments I'd never known existed, all in my name. Tax forms listed substantial income I'd never received. Deeper in the drawer, I found a stack of loan applications with my forged signature, credit lines opened, using my social security number. The room spun as the truth became clear. My father had been using my identity for years, establishing shell companies and accounts to conceal income and engage in what appeared to be systematic tax fraud. In a hidden compartment beneath his desk drawer discovered when I accidentally pressed a latch, I found even more damning evidence. Records of offshore accounts, properties purchased through untraceable LLCs, and communications with individuals whose names I recognized from news reports about questionable financial practices. I photographed everything, hands shaking so badly some images came out blurred. I copied key documents, replaced the originals exactly as I'd found them, and left the house with my childhood possessions plus evidence of crimes I never imagined my own father committing. Back in my apartment, I sat surrounded by papers, unable to fully process what I'd discovered. My father, who lectured endlessly about integrity in business, who criticized my career choices despite my ethical approach, had been committing financial crimes under my name. The next day at work, I confided in Brady Wilson, a colleague who specialized in financial crimes before joining our firm. Hazel. This isn't just identity theft, though that's serious enough, Brady said, examining the documents carefully. These transactions suggest money laundering, tax evasion at a significant scale, and possibly securities fraud. As a financial professional, you're legally obligated to report this. Hes, my father, I whispered, the words sounding hollow even to me. Who stole your identity and implicated you in federal crimes? Brady reminded me gently. If the authorities discover this independently, you could be considered complicit, especially given your profession. For 3 days, I agonized over my decision. I finally determined I would confront my parents first, give them one chance to explain before taking legal action. That Sunday, I arrived at their home unannounced. Both parents were irritated by my interruption of their brunch routine. I know about the accounts in my name, I stated flatly after refusing offers of coffee. Dad's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened around his newspaper. I don't know what you're talking about. I placed copied documents on the table. Tax fraud. Identity theft. Multiple felonies. Using my social security number and forged signatures. Want me to continue? Mom's face drained of color. Dad maintained his composure, studying me with cold calculation. You've always been so dramatic, Hazel. Mom finally said, sliding the papers away as if they were distasteful menu options. Your father manages everyone's finances. It's complex, you wouldn't understand the strategies involved. Identity theft isn't a strategy, it's a crime. Dad finally spoke, voice unnervingly calm. You've benefited from family money your entire life. Do you think your position at that second-rate firm came from merit? Who do you think recommended you to Jonathan Preston? The implication struck like a physical blow. My career, the one thing I believed I'd built independently, tainted by unseen parental interference. That doesn't justify financial fraud using my identity. I persisted. Dad's calm facade cracked. You ungrateful little, he caught himself, then leaned forward. If you pursue this, you'll destroy this family. Is that what you want? To punish Amber for being more loved? To ruin your mother's social standing out of petty jealousy? This isn't about Amber. It's about you committing crimes in my name. No one will believe you, he said, voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I'll make sure your firm knows about your mental health problems. What mental health problems? Mom interjected smoothly. Your episodes in college, dear. The counseling sessions. The manipulation was breathtaking. I'd seen a campus counselor 3 times after a difficult breakup, something I'd mentioned only to my mother during a rare, vulnerable moment. Try to ruin me, Dad continued, and I'll ensure you never work in finance again. Is that clear? As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Amber. Mom says you're causing drama again. Why can't you just let everyone be happy? So selfish. I left in tears, hands shaking so badly I could barely drive. But beneath the hurt, something hardened within me. The final illusion that somewhere beneath it all, they cared about me had shattered completely. 3 days later, using a public computer at the library and an anonymous email account, I sent copies of all evidence to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, and the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. The first domino had fallen. 2 weeks passed with excruciating slowness. I jumped at every phone call, startled at every email notification. Then, one Tuesday morning, the headline appeared on my financial news feed. Mitchell Investment Strategies under federal investigation for alleged fraud. The article detailed preliminary investigations into Richard Mitchell's company, citing anonymous whistleblower evidence of potential tax evasion and securities violations. The stock price of his publicly traded company plummeted 27% before noon. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen, feeling strangely numb. Part of me had hoped they would quietly resolve the issues, perhaps reach a settlement without public disclosure. Another part recognized the naivety of that hope, given the scale of what I'd discovered. My phone exploded with notifications. First came Amber, her message dripping with accusation. What did you do? Dad says someone's trying to destroy him with lies. This has your jealousy written all over it. I didn't respond. Next came 3 missed calls from my mother, followed by a voicemail that made my stomach churn. Hazel, it's your mother. The FBI just left our house. They took your father's computers, files, even my personal laptop. We know this is your doing. Call me immediately. I deleted the message. By evening, financial news outlets were reporting federal agents had executed search warrants at Mitchell Investment Strategies offices. Dad had been taken in for questioning but released without immediate charges. At 11 that night, my mother called again. This time, I answered. We need money, she said without preamble, voice uncharacteristically shaky. Excuse me. They've frozen most of our accounts. The attorneys want another $50,000 retainer. Your father's reputation is in tatters. You caused this mess. You need to help fix it. The audacity was breathtaking. You want me to fund Dad's legal defense for crimes committed using my identity? Don't be so technical. Family stands together in crisis. When I didn't immediately respond, her tone shifted. Listen to me, you ungrateful little bitch. After everything we've done for you, I hung up, blocked her number, then sat in my darkened apartment, shaking with a mixture of rage and grief. The next morning at work, Catherine Donovan, my direct supervisor, called me into her office. A stern woman in her 50s who had broken numerous glass ceilings in financial management, Catherine had always been professionally supportive but personally distant. Your father's name is all over the financial news, she said without preamble. Are you all right? The simple human concern in her voice nearly broke me. I'm managing. Are you aware of the allegations? I nodded, unsure how much to reveal. Catherine studied me carefully. Hazel, I need to know if there's anything that might impact your work or our firm's reputation. Client trust is paramount in this business. Something in her expression, concern without judgment, compelled honesty. The investigation concerns activities I had no knowledge of until recently, including, I hesitated, then continued, including financial accounts and transactions conducted in my name without my consent or knowledge. Catherine's expression shifted from concern to sharp focus. Identity theft? By your father? Yes. Have you reported this? I nodded again. Her next words surprised me. Then you're the whistleblower. It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. That took courage, she said quietly. Few have the strength to stand against family, even when necessary. Before our conversation could continue, her phone rang. Her expression darkened as she answered. Yes, Richard, she is. No, I don't think that's appropriate. That's a serious accusation. She glanced at me, covering the mouthpiece. Your father is downstairs, demanding to see you. Security is detaining him. My blood ran cold. Catherine returned to the call. Mr. Mitchell, I suggest you leave voluntarily before I have security escort you from the premises. After hanging up, she explained, Hess claiming you stole confidential documents from his home office and company funds from family accounts. The next hour became a blur. Security footage showed my father in the lobby, red-faced and shouting. Catherine intervened when 2 senior partners suggested I take leave until the family matter resolved. 3 clients called requesting reassignment to different advisors, citing concerns about my connection to the Mitchell investigation. By day's end, despite Catherine's advocacy, the damage was spreading. The managing partners called an emergency meeting and emerged with a compromise. I would take a paid 2-week leave while they conducted an internal review of all my client accounts and transactions. It's actually for your protection, Catherine explained, walking me to my car. They'll find everything in perfect order, and you'll return with your reputation intact. But as I drove home to my empty apartment, the weight of isolation pressed down. My family had abandoned me worse, actively worked to destroy me. My professional reputation hung by a thread. My carefully constructed life was unraveling because I'd finally stood up for myself. I crawled into bed fully dressed, wondering if I'd made a catastrophic mistake. For the first time since childhood, I cried myself to sleep, feeling utterly defeated. The anonymous email arrived 3 days into my forced leave, sent to my personal account from an encrypted address. Not everyone in your father's circle supports his methods. Check the attached files. Delete after reading. Use carefully. My finger hesitated over the attachment. Could this be a trap? My father trying to catch me in illegal access of confidential information? After scanning it with 3 different virus programs, I finally opened it. Inside was a goldmine. Internal accounting records from Mitchell Investment Strategies spanning 7 years. Each file meticulously documented transfers between accounts, including the trail of money flowing through the fraudulent accounts in my name. The sender revealed himself in the final document, Raymond Weber, my father's senior accountant for over 20 years. His note explained his position simply. I've raised concerns about these practices for years. Your father threatened my pension, my reputation. I stayed silent too long. Your courage inspired mine. Contact me securely using the provided channel if needed. Raymond had provided something else: invaluable records showing my father had systematically drained my trust fund, established by my maternal grandmother, transferring over $500,000 to accounts accessible only to my parents and occasionally, Amber. Money that legally belonged to me had funded Amber's luxury apartment during law school, her European vacations, even the down payment on her new condo, the one my parents had generously provided as a graduation gift. With trembling hands, I began organizing the information, creating timelines and transaction maps. I needed irrefutable evidence that I was a victim, not a participant. The next day, I reached out to Amber, suggesting we meet at a neutral coffee shop. Perhaps naively, I still hoped to salvage some relationship with my sister, to help her understand the reality of our parents' manipulations. She arrived 40 minutes late, designer sunglasses failing to hide her hangover, immediately launching into complaints about the nightmare I'd created. Dad can barely show his face at the club, she huffed. Mom had to cancel hosting the charity luncheon. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? Amber, did you know where the money for your condo came from? She rolled her eyes. Dad's company, obviously. No. My trust fund. The one Grandma Elaine set up for me. Her expression flickered briefly before settling into practiced innocence. That's ridiculous. I slid copies of the transaction records across the table. The money was transferred through shell companies, but the origin is clear. My trust fund paid for your apartment during law school, your semester in Paris, and now your condo. Amber glanced at the papers, then pushed them back dismissively. So what? It's all family money anyway. It wasn't Dad's to take. It was legally mine. She leaned forward, dropping her voice. Look, Hazel, that's how family works. Resources go where they're needed. You've always been so capable, so independent. I needed more support. Support is different from theft. Don't be so dramatic. She sighed dramatically. What do you want? Money back? Dad will arrange something when this witch hunt ends. I want you to understand what they've done. To both of us. They've turned us against each other our entire lives. Amber's expression hardened. No, you've done that with your jealousy. Now you're trying to destroy Dad because you can't stand that he loves me more. That's not. Just stop this, Hazel. Drop whatever you've told the authorities. Say you were mistaken. We can go back to normal. She reached for my hand in a gesture that felt rehearsed. Please? For the family. I withdrew my hand. I can't do that. Her eyes narrowed. Then you're not my sister anymore. You're choosing to destroy everything. What Amber didn't realize was that Eid recorded our entire conversation on my phone, capturing her implicit admission of knowing about the misappropriated funds. The recording proved crucial sooner than expected. 2 days later, I received a call from Detective James Wilson of the Financial Crimes Division. My father had filed a formal complaint, claiming I had stolen company documents and embezzled from family accounts. Has provided bank records showing irregular transfers to your personal account over the past year. Detective Wilson explained carefully. Given your position at Preston Financial, these allegations are being taken seriously. My heart raced, but Raymond's evidence had prepared me for this. Those records are falsified. I can prove it. I spent the next morning at the police station with Catherine, who insisted on accompanying me as a character witness. I presented my evidence. The original documents showing my father's theft, Raymond's records confirming the timeline, and the recording of Amber acknowledging the misappropriation of my trust fund. Detective Wilson reviewed everything carefully. This contradicts your father's claims significantly. You'll need to investigate further, but these documents suggest you're the victim, not the perpetrator. As we left the station, Catherine squeezed my shoulder. They won't be able to touch your reputation after this. Her confidence proved premature. That evening, I discovered all my bank accounts frozen, not by law enforcement, but through some manipulation of banking contacts by my father. My credit cards were declined when I tried to buy groceries. My apartment building received an anonymous tip claiming I was conducting illegal business from my unit. With my financial resources suddenly inaccessible and my home situation precarious, I faced a new low. Catherine offered her guest room temporarily, a kindness that brought me to tears. Raymond reached out through our secure channel, helping me establish new accounts under enhanced security protocols at banks where my father had no connections. He also introduced me to a financial investigator who specialized in identity theft recovery. Your father is attempting to isolate you completely, the investigator explained. It's a common tactic in family financial abuse cases. He's counting on you becoming desperate enough to drop the accusations in exchange for restored access to your life. Instead of capitulating, I began methodically documenting every retaliatory action. Each move my family made against me became another piece of evidence showing consciousness of guilt. While my professional and financial life remained in turmoil, I found unexpected strength in finally seeing my family's dynamics with clarity. The fog of seeking approval had lifted, revealing the manipulation that had controlled me for years. By month's end, I had established new financial accounts, secured temporary housing, and assembled a comprehensive case file. Raymond's evidence combined with my documentation created an undeniable pattern of financial abuse, identity theft, and now witness intimidation. As Catherine reminded me over dinner in her home, they've shown you who they really are. Now show them who you really are. 6 weeks after the fateful dinner, I began rebuilding my life piece by piece. The internal investigation at work cleared me of any wrongdoing, allowing my return with full responsibilities. 3 of the 5 clients who had left returned, citing confidence in my integrity. Catherine had become not just a professional mentor but a trusted ally. The criminal investigation into my father's activities continued, with occasional updates from Detective Wilson indicating they were making progress. I maintained my secure communication with Raymond, who continued providing information while maintaining his position at my father's company. On a Wednesday evening, I received a text from Jill Parker, a family friend I'd known since childhood. Though connected to my parents' social circle, Jill had always been kind to me, occasionally expressing subtle disapproval of how my parents treated me differently from Amber. In town for conference. Heard about family situation. Could use friendly face. Dinner tomorrow. After weeks of isolation, the prospect of connection with someone from my past, someone who might understand the family dynamics without complete bias, felt like a lifeline. We arranged to meet at a restaurant downtown. Jill arrived, looking polished as ever, greeted me with a warm hug, and expressed what seemed like genuine concern about the family turmoil. Over appetizers, she asked thoughtful questions about my perspective, nodding sympathetically as I shared a carefully edited version of events. "I always thought they were harder on you," she commented, topping off my wine glass. But I never imagined financial impropriety of this scale. Something about her phrasing struck me as odd, too formal, rehearsed. But I dismissed my unease as paranoia, born from recent betrayals. As dinner progressed, Jill asked increasingly specific questions about the investigation, the evidence I'd provided authorities, and Raymond's involvement. Each query came wrapped in sympathy, but the pattern became unmistakable. My phone buzzed with a text. Excusing myself to the restroom, I checked the message from Raymond. Urgent. Company security discovered backup server access from my computer. Your father suspects internal leak. Be careful who you trust right now. In the bathroom stall, cold realization washed over me. Jill's sudden reappearance. Her targeted questions. This wasn't coincidence. I returned to the table with heightened awareness, noticing her slight disappointment when I deflected questions about specific evidence. "You know," I said casually, watching her reaction. "The strangest thing happened recently. Someone accessed my personal email account, but the security system couldn't trace the source." Jill's expression remained sympathetic, but her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around her fork. "That's terrible. Do they think it's related to your father's case?" "The investigator thinks it might be. They're tracking all unusual communications. A complete fabrication, but her momentary discomfort confirmed my suspicions." I made an excuse about early meetings, paid the bill despite her protests, and left as quickly as politeness allowed. During the ride home, my mind raced. Who else in my life might be reporting back to my family? The answer waited at my apartment building. The security guard stopped me in the lobby. "Miss Mitchell, there was a problem with your unit." The maintenance team responded to a water leak report from the tenant below. They found... Well, you should see for yourself. My apartment had been ransacked, not in the chaotic way of common burglars, but with methodical precision. My laptop was missing. File cabinets stood empty, personal documents scattered. Even my physical backup drive had vanished from its hiding place inside a hollowed-out book. I called Detective Wilson immediately, who dispatched officers to document the scene. While waiting, I checked the building's security footage with the guard's help. The camera clearly showed Jill entering the building 3 hours earlier, during our dinner. She used a key card to access the elevator, a card I certainly hadn't provided. "Do you recognize her?" the guard asked. "Yes," I replied quietly. "She's a family friend." Further footage showed her leaving 40 minutes later, carrying a large tote bag that had been flat when she arrived. Detective Wilson arrived personally, examining the scene with growing concern. "Miss Mitchell, this goes beyond financial crimes now. This is breaking and entering, theft, possibly destruction of evidence in an ongoing investigation." I nodded numbly, still processing the violation. "Does anyone else have access to your apartment?" "No. I changed the locks after the investigation began." The detectives team discovered how Jill had entered a duplicate key card created through the building's management system using a forged email request that appeared to come from me. After the police left, I sat amid the chaos, overwhelmed by the calculated betrayal. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Hazel, it's Jill. I need to explain. How did you get my new number?" A pause. Amber gave it to me. Anger replaced shock. The same Amber you helped rob my apartment. It wasn't supposed to go that far, she said, voice trembling. I just agreed to find out what evidence you had. I didn't know they planned to take your things. Why would you help them at all? Another pause. Amber and I have been seeing each other for about 8 months now. The pieces clicked into place. Amber's mysterious weekend trips, Jill's increased presence at family events. She said you were unstable, vindictive about your parents favoring her. She was crying, Hazel. Said you were destroying your father out of jealousy. And you believed her. I didn't know what to believe. But now. She exhaled shakily. The things they asked me to do, the way your apartment was ransacked, it doesn't match what Amber claimed. What did they take? What were they looking for? Evidence files. Anything connecting your father to the fraudulent accounts. Amber said there's a backup drive with all your communications with the authorities. My mind raced. The backup existed, but not where they had looked. I'd given it to Catherine for safekeeping weeks ago. Hazel, I'm sorry. I hung up, blocked the number, then collapsed onto my bare mattress, the one item too large to steal. The betrayal felt complete. Family, home, even peripheral connections like Jill, all compromised. Around midnight, Catherine arrived, responding to my desperate text. She surveyed the damage, then opened her arms. For the first time since childhood, I accepted comfort without reservation, sobbing against her shoulder. You're staying with me, she said firmly. No arguments. They'll never stop, I whispered. They'll take everything. Catherine held me at arm's length, her gaze steel. Only if you let them. This, she gestured around the violated apartment. This is what desperate people do when they're losing. They've shown their hand, Hazel, and it's weaker than they want you to believe. That night, in Catherine's guest room, I reached my lowest point. Had standing up for myself been worth this complete destruction of my life? For a dark moment, I contemplated calling my father, negotiating some surrender that would at least leave me with a career and home. The next morning, Catherine sat me down with coffee. I recognize that look, she said. You're considering giving up. They've taken everything. No, they've taken things. Important things, yes, but replaceable. What they can't take is who you are unless you let them. What's left to fight with? They've destroyed my home, threatened my career, turned everyone against me. Catherine leaned forward. Not everyone. I'm here. Raymond's risking everything to help you. Detective Wilson believes you. You have allies, Hazel. And she slid a folder across the table. Raymond sent this last night. Apparently, he anticipated something like this might happen. Inside was a complete duplicate of all evidence Raymond had previously provided, plus new documents showing my father had begun liquidating overseas assets, a clear sign of preparation for potential flight. He kept backups of the backups, Catherine explained. And he's identified 3 more employees willing to testify about your father's financial manipulations. As I reviewed the documents, Catherine made a crucial observation. Have you noticed your father's pattern? Each time you stand firm, he escalates dramatically, first threatening your job, then your financial independence, now your home. Has not acting strategically anymore, has panicking. She was right. My father, the calculated businessman, was making increasingly desperate moves. The more I withstood, the more erratically he behaved, and the more evidence of wrongdoing he created. That afternoon, I learned from an industry colleague that my father had been calling various financial firms, spreading rumors about my mental instability and vindictive fabrications. Several former clients reported uncomfortable conversations where he implied I had mismanaged their accounts. Instead of breaking me, this revelation crystallized my resolve. My father wasn't just defending himself. He was actively trying to destroy my professional future regardless of the investigation's outcome. I spent the weekend in Catherine's home office, organizing a comprehensive strategy. If my family wanted war, they would discover I had inherited my father's determination, if not his ethical flexibility. With Raymond's evidence secured, and my own documentation of retaliatory actions growing daily, I prepared for the next phase, not just defending against my family's attacks, but actively exposing the full extent of their deception. 3 months after the dinner that changed everything, I sat in the sleek downtown office of Grace Davis, one of the city's most formidable attorneys specializing in financial crimes and whistleblower protections. Catherine had made the introduction through professional connections, but Grace's interest stemmed from the case details themselves. "I've opposed your father in court twice," Grace explained, reviewing my meticulously organized evidence files. "Both times he managed technical victories through procedural maneuvering and intimidated witnesses. I've waited years to see him face actual consequences." She agreed to represent me pro bono, with any eventual settlement directed to a foundation supporting victims of financial abuse. Her team of forensic accountants began analyzing Raymond's evidence, identifying patterns even more extensive than initially apparent. "Your father's activities go beyond simple tax evasion or identity theft," Grace explained during our third meeting. "We're seeing evidence of systematic money laundering through shell companies established in your name and others. Some transactions suggest connections to questionable international clients that might interest federal authorities beyond the SEC and IRS." The investigation expanded accordingly. Grace coordinated with Detective Wilson and federal agencies, creating a comprehensive picture of my father's financial empire, much of it built on fraudulent practices and deception. One Tuesday afternoon, Grace called with breakthrough news. "The forensic team found something significant. Several transactions link your father's company to donations for Congressman Whitford's campaign donations that appear to have been rewarded with favorable regulatory treatment for certain investment categories. Political corruption." My stomach tightened at the implications. "Potentially. This elevates the case considerably." I forwarded the evidence to appropriate federal authorities. The impact was immediate. 2 financial news outlets began investigating rumors of a widening probe into Mitchell investment strategies. My father's company's stock, already weakened, dropped another 15% on the speculation alone. As the walls closed in, my parents intensified their counterattacks. 3 separate intermediaries, former family friends, a distant cousin, even my mother's therapist, contacted me with settlement offers. In exchange for retracting my misunderstandings with authorities, my father would restore my accounts, pay generous compensation, and ensure my professional reputation remained intact. Each offer revealed increasing desperation, climbing from $50,000 to over $2 million by the third approach. Each time, I forwarded the communications to Grace and declined. My father's influence remained powerful, however. Through connections with senior board members at Preston Financial, he orchestrated enough pressure that even Catherine couldn't shield me completely. The firm placed me on extended administrative leave with pay, a compromise position that acknowledged they'd found no wrongdoing but needed to maintain client confidence during the ongoing Mitchell investigation. Catherine was livid. "It's pure cowardice. The board is protecting their golf buddies instead of standing by a proven employee." Though financially secure through my leave arrangement, the professional setback stung deeply. Id built my identity around my career achievements, the one area where Id found validation independent of my family. Now, that too had been compromised. I channeled my frustration into supporting the investigation. With time on my hands, I worked alongside Grace's team, identifying additional documents authorities should request and explaining complex transaction patterns my father typically employed. Raymond continued providing crucial information, though his position grew increasingly precarious as my father fired staff members in paranoid attempts to identify the internal leak. During a secure meeting arranged by Grace, Raymond finally explained his motivation. 20 years ago, I noticed discrepancies but convinced myself it wasn't my business," he explained, looking older than his 60 years. "When your grandmother's trust fund manipulation began, I raised concerns. Your father threatened to ruin me, claimed head-planted evidence of embezzlement under my name if I didn't cooperate." He looked at me with sad eyes. "I have a daughter your age. Every time your father used your identity, moved your trust money to Amber, I saw her face. I couldn't live with myself anymore." His words reminded me that beyond the financial crimes lay deeper ethical violations, the betrayal of a parent's fundamental responsibility to protect their child. Through Grace's connections, I met Lauren Zhao, an investigative journalist specializing in financial corruption. After several meetings establishing trust and reviewing evidence, Lauren began researching what would eventually become a major exposé. "This story has everything," she explained during one of our carefully arranged meetings. "Family drama, financial corruption, political connections, whistleblower courage. but we need absolute verification of every detail before publishing. I provided information while maintaining official deniability, careful not to violate any legal restrictions Grace had outlined. Lauren's methodical investigation gradually uncovered additional threads, connecting my father's activities to broader patterns of financial manipulation. 6 weeks into Lauren's investigation, my father somehow discovered my cooperation with authorities had expanded. A threatening text arrived from an unknown number. "Back off now, or everything you've built will disappear permanently. Last warning." Grace immediately filed for a restraining order against both parents, using the message as evidence of escalating intimidation. The judge granted the order, marking the first official legal acknowledgement of my position as victim rather than conspirator. The restraining order prompted another unexpected betrayal. I learned through a former colleague that Amber had been contacting my professional network, describing me as mentally unstable, claiming I'd fabricated evidence against our father during a psychological breakdown. The accusation nearly worked with Martin Winters, a mentor from early in my career whose recommendation had opened several important doors. He called expressing concern about my situation and suggesting a recommended psychiatrist. The manipulation might have succeeded had Raymond not provided documentation of a $50,000 consulting fee paid from one of my father's shell companies to Martin's wife's charity 3 days before his call. Each attack strengthened my resolve, but the constant vigilance took its toll. Nights in Catherine's guest room often ended with anxiety attacks or tears of frustration. The isolation from my former life colleagues, acquaintances, even distant relatives who now avoided me, created a profound loneliness. Raymond noticed during one of our meetings, after reviewing new evidence, he hesitated before saying, "You know, my wife and I host Sunday dinners. Nothing fancy, just family and a few close friends. You'd be welcome to join us." His simple offer of normal human connection brought unexpected tears. "Why are you risking so much to help me? The documents would have been enough. Because 30 years ago, my father disowned me for marrying someone he disapproved of," he replied quietly. "I know what it feels like when family becomes the source of your pain instead of your refuge. No one should face that alone." That Sunday dinner with Raymond's family, his wife Susan, their daughter Emily, and 2 longtime friends provided my first experience of what family meals could be: warm, supportive, filled with genuine interest in each person's life. No performance required, no constant comparison, just acceptance. As I drove back to Catherine's that night, I realized I was developing something I'd never had before: a chosen family built on mutual respect rather than obligation and fear. The revelation strengthened my determination. This fight wasn't just about justice for financial crimes anymore. It was about breaking free from the prison of seeking approval from people incapable of providing it. 6 months after that fateful dinner, I awoke to my phone buzzing with notifications. Lauren Zhou's investigative piece had finally published in the Financial Chronicle under the headline, "Shadow Empire: Inside the Fraudulent Financial World of Richard Mitchell." The comprehensive exposé detailed my father's decades of financial manipulation, from early questionable practices to the elaborate web of identity theft, tax evasion, and money laundering constructed in recent years. While I wasn't named as the whistleblower, Lauren carefully documented how my father had stolen my identity and trust fund. Most damning were the connections Lauren uncovered between my father's company and political figures who had helped shield his activities from regulatory scrutiny. 3 congressmen and a former Treasury Department official were implicated in receiving substantial benefits in exchange for regulatory blindness. By 9 that morning, the story had been picked up by major news outlets. By noon, Mitchell Investment Strategies stock had been suspended from trading after falling 60% in 3 hours. By evening, 5 former clients had filed lawsuits against my father's company. I watched it unfold from Catherine's living room, emotions oscillating between vindication and grief. The empire built on deception was collapsing spectacularly, but it had still been my family's empire. The finality of the rupture became undeniable as my mother appeared on financial news, defending my father with rehearsed indignation. "These allegations are completely fabricated," she declared, perfect makeup and pearls creating an image of wounded propriety. "My husband has served the financial community with integrity for 40 years. This witch hunt is driven by competitors who fear his success." Her performance might have been convincing to those who didn't know her, tells the slight tightening around her eyes when lying, the way she touched her necklace for reassurance. I recognized every defensive gesture from childhood confrontations over Amber's preferential treatment. Speaking of Amber, she arrived unannounced at Catherine's apartment that evening, somehow obtaining the address despite my precautions. Catherine was out at a dinner meeting, leaving me to face my sister alone when the doorman called to announce her. "Let her up," I said after a moment's hesitation. Better to confront her in a controlled environment than have her create a scene in the lobby. Amber entered like a storm. Designer clothes slightly disheveled, eyes red from either crying or drinking, possibly both. "Are you happy now?" she demanded without preamble. "Dad's company is ruined. Everyone's talking about us. Mom can't even go to her yoga class without being stared at." "I didn't write the article," I replied calmly, maintaining distance between us. "Don't play innocent. This has you written all over it." She paced Catherine's elegant living room, running hands through her usually perfect hair. "Do you have any idea what you've done to this family?" "What family, Amber? The one where Dad stole my identity and trust fund to fund your lifestyle? Where Mom helped cover it up? Where you knew about it and said nothing?" She stopped pacing, face flushing. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like? Explain it to me." "You were always so capable. So independent. You didn't need things the way I did." The justification sounded hollow even to her, judging by her expression. "That doesn't justify theft or fraud. It was family resources being allocated where they were needed." Her voice rose defensively. "My trust fund from grandmother wasn't a family resource, it was legally mine. Dad committed felonies to take it. So you're destroying everyone over money? How materialistic can you be?" The hypocrisy was breathtaking. "This isn't about money, it's about decades of manipulation and lies. It's about our parents creating a dynamic where you were entitled to everything and I deserved nothing." Something shifted in Amber's expression, a momentary crack in her defensive anger. "You think I had it easy? Do you have any idea what it's like living up to their expectations? The constant pressure to be perfect, to reflect well on them. At least they had expectations for you. I was just the inconvenient first draft they wished they could erase. You think I didn't know they preferred me? It was obvious, Hazel. And guess what? It was awful. Every advantage came with the understanding that I couldn't fail, couldn't disappoint, couldn't be myself." The revelation hung between us, the first honest conversation we'd ever had about our family dynamics. "You know what else?" Amber continued, voice dropping. "I was always jealous of you." "What?" "Your independence, your ability to build your own life without their approval." "God, Hazel, you have no idea how many times I wished I had your courage." For a moment, I glimpsed what might have been possible between us in a healthier family system. But as quickly as the vulnerability appeared, it vanished behind familiar defensiveness. "But that doesn't justify this public humiliation," she snapped. "You could have handled this privately. Instead, you've made sure everyone knows our business. Dad could go to prison. Did you think about that? He committed prison-worthy crimes, Amber, for decades. He's still our father." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "And now you've made sure I lose everything too. My job offers are being rescinded. My boyfriend broke up with me. Even my lease is in jeopardy because the building doesn't want the association. I'm sorry for your collateral damage, but save it. You're not sorry. You finally found a way to be the favorite, the righteous whistleblower taking down the corrupt businessman." She moved toward the door. "Congratulations on your revenge, Hazel. I hope it keeps you warm at night." "Amber, wait." She turned, eyes cold. "You're not my sister anymore. You'll regret this, I promise." The threat lingered after she slammed the door. By morning, its meaning became clear when I discovered my car vandalized in the secure parking garage, deep scratches across the paint, tires slashed, Traitor carved into the hood. Security cameras captured Amber entering the garage at 2:18 a.m., clearly intoxicated, using an access card she shouldn't have possessed. The footage showed her methodically damaging my car over 20 minutes before security finally noticed and intervened. Detective Wilson reviewed the evidence personally. "We have her dead to rights on property damage, potentially breaking and entering depending on how she obtained the access card. Given the ongoing investigation, and her connection to intimidation attempts, the prosecutor might consider additional charges. Amber was arrested, booked, and released on bail paid by our parents within hours. Their expensive attorney arranged a hearing the following week, while they launched a coordinated social media campaign portraying Amber as the victim of my vendetta against the family. Former friends from college, distant relatives, even my mother's book club members posted supportive messages about Amber while condemning my jealous betrayal of the family. The coordinated nature suggested professional management, likely a crisis PR firm hired by my parents. The public smear campaign might have devastated me months earlier. Now, it merely confirmed the pathology it escaped. Each post revealed another person willing to support comfortable lies rather than uncomfortable truth. Unexpected support emerged from surprising sources. Former classmates, I'd barely spoken to in years, reached out with messages of encouragement. Several colleagues from Preston Financial sent private expressions of solidarity despite the firm's official distance from my situation. Catherine's professional network provided referrals and opportunities that would become important later. Most significantly, Raymond's evidence resulted in formal charges against my father for identity theft, tax evasion, wire fraud, and tampering with witnesses. The case had grown beyond financial regulators to include the Department of Justice and FBI. My father's former political connections distanced themselves publicly as evidence of their entanglements emerged. His carefully constructed facade of respectability had crumbled completely, revealing the corrupt reality beneath. 1 year after the dinner that had changed everything, I sat in Grace's office reviewing the federal prosecutor's latest update. My father faced trial on 27 counts carrying potential sentences totaling over 30 years. While he remained free on substantial bail, the pre-trial restrictions severely limited his movements and financial activities. The family's fortune had largely evaporated, drained by legal fees, settlements with former clients, and the collapse of Mitchell Investment Strategies. The mansion had been sold to cover mounting debts, forcing my parents to relocate to a modest condominium in a less prestigious neighborhood. My mother's social circle had contracted dramatically as former friends distanced themselves from the scandal. Amber struggled most visibly with the changed circumstances. Without parental financial support, she found her law degree opened fewer doors than expected, especially with the Mitchell name now associated with financial crimes. Her property damage case had resulted in probation and mandatory counseling, a lenient outcome engineered by expensive attorneys. My own life had stabilized in unexpected ways. Catherine had championed my return to Preston Financial with a formal apology from the firm and promotion to senior advisor. My client portfolio had actually grown, with several high-profile clients specifically requesting my services after learning of my whistleblower role. The professional integrity ID demonstrated appealed to those seeking genuinely ethical financial management. The prosecutor is confident about the case, Grace explained, reviewing the latest documents. Your father's attorneys have approached about potential plea arrangements, which suggests they recognize the evidence is overwhelming. Will I need to testify? The prospect of facing my father in court still triggered anxiety despite the progress it had made in therapy. Possibly, though the documentary evidence is strong enough that they may not need your direct testimony. They'll let us know. Grace was interrupted by her assistant's knock. Miss Mitchell? I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a Sarah Mitchell insisting on speaking with you. She says it's urgent family business. My mother. After months of silence, Grace raised an eyebrow. Your call, Hazel. I'll speak with her briefly. I decided after a moment's consideration, but in your conference room, please, and ID like you present. My mother entered the conference room with remnants of her former elegance designer outfit carefully preserved from better days, jewelry more prominent than appropriate for mourning. But her face showed strain no expensive skincare could disguise. Hazel, she began, voice carefully modulated to project concern. Thank you for agreeing to see me. What do you want, Mom? She flinched slightly at my directness. I have news I thought you should hear from family. She paused for effect. I've been diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. The announcement landed like a physical blow. Despite everything, hearing my mother was seriously ill triggered genuine concern. I'm very sorry to hear that. The treatments have already begun. The prognosis is uncertain. She dabbed at eyes that remained suspiciously dry. I thought perhaps this situation might help put our family difficulties in perspective. And there it was, the manipulation beneath the medical disclosure. I'd learned to recognize these tactics in therapy. I'm genuinely sorry about your diagnosis, Mom. I wish you the best possible outcome with treatment. Is that all? Her practiced composure slipped. Your mother tells you she has cancer, and that's your response. What response are you looking for exactly? Some indication that you care, that you're willing to put aside this vendetta during a family health crisis. My concern for your health is genuine. It's separate from the legal proceedings against Dad. They're not separate to me. Her voice rose. My husband faces prison while I'm fighting cancer. Can't you see what you've done to this family? Before I could respond, the conference room door opened. My father stood there, ignoring Grace's assistant's protests behind him. Mr. Mitchell, you're violating the restraining order, Grace stated firmly, reaching for her phone. 2 minutes, he demanded, looking not at Grace but directly at me. The powerful figure who had dominated my childhood appeared diminished hair grayer, posture slightly stooped, designer suit hanging looser than his former tailoring would permit. You're not supposed to be here, Dad. Your mother's condition is real, he said, ignoring my statement. She needs family support. I'm sorry to hear about Mom's diagnosis, but you'll continue destroying what's left of this family anyway, he finished. Bitterness evident. After everything we gave me? You stole from me, used my identity, drained my trust fund, family resources, he dismissed with the same arrogance Amber had shown. Everything I built was for this family. No, it was for you. Your ego, your status, your control. His expression hardened. You want to talk reality? Fine. I'm facing significant prison time. Your mother has cancer and limited resources for treatment. We're prepared to make you an offer. Grace interrupted sharply. Mr. Mitchell, any discussion of case-related matters should go through proper legal channels. He ignored her completely. The remaining family assets, approximately $4 million in properties and investments, shielded from the investigations transferred to your control. In exchange, you modify your testimony, indicate uncertainty about key documents. I stared in disbelief. You're asking me to perjure myself. After everything, I'm offering you control of what remains of the family fortune, he corrected, voice dropping to the persuasive tone head used to close countless deals. You'd be financially set for life. Your mother gets necessary treatment. I receive a reduced sentence with possible probation, and justice for your crimes disappears. Something darker flashed in his eyes. Don't lecture me about justice while destroying your family. Your mother could die while I'm in prison. Is that the outcome you want? The emotional manipulation was textbook, exactly what my therapist had prepared me for. I'm sorry about Mom's diagnosis, and I hope she receives excellent care, but I won't commit perjury to shield you from consequences. Then you're not the daughter I raised. That's probably the most accurate thing you've ever said to me. My mother began crying real tears now that the manipulation had failed. My father's expression shifted to something I'd never seen directed at me before: fear. He realized Head miscalculated completely. The daughter Head dismissed for decades, whose identity and resources Head stolen without consequence, now held power he couldn't intimidate or control away. This conversation is over, Grace announced firmly. Mr. Mitchell, you violated the restraining order. That will be reported to the authorities. This isn't finished, Hazel, he said quietly, as Grace's assistant arrived with security. Family is forever, whether you like it or not. What my father didn't know was that Grace had activated recording equipment when they entered, capturing his attempted witness tampering completely. The recording went to prosecutors that afternoon, resulting in my father's bail being revoked. He was taken into custody pending trial, his desperate attempt to manipulate me backfiring spectacularly. My mother's cancer diagnosis proved legitimate, though her oncologist later confirmed the prognosis was far less dire than Shed implied during our meeting. Following my father's detention, she held a small press conference outside their condominium. I formally disown my daughter Hazel, she announced to the gathered reporters, voice breaking with what appeared to be genuine emotion. No child who destroys their family as she has done deserves the Mitchell name. The public declaration should have hurt more than it did. Instead, it felt like the formal ending of something that had died long ago. 2 weeks later, Amber made a final attempt at reconciliation on her terms. She suggested lunch at a neutral restaurant, arriving with a folder of legal documents. Mom and Dad's attorneys drafted these, she explained, sliding them across the table. If you sign, agreeing to modify your testimony and statements to authorities, they'll ensure you receive 20% of remaining family assets. That's your idea of reconciliation? A bribe to commit perjury. It's a path back to family, she insisted. Everyone makes mistakes, Hazel, even Dad. Can't you find forgiveness? Forgiveness requires acknowledgement of wrongdoing and changed behavior. I haven't seen either, so self-righteous, she muttered, mask slipping. This is your last chance, Hazel. After this, you're truly alone. I thought of Catherine's unwavering support, Raymond's Sunday dinners where I was now a regular guest, the therapist who had helped me understand the dynamics that shaped my life. I'm not alone, Amber. I've found my real family. She left without ordering, taking the unsigned documents with her. The following month, I attended my father's sentencing hearing after his legal team negotiated a guilty plea to reduced charges. Standing before the judge, I delivered a victim impact statement that had taken weeks to perfect with my therapist's help. The financial crimes detailed in this case represent only part of the damage, I stated, voice steady despite my father's stare from the defendant's table. Richard Mitchell created a family system built on favoritism, manipulation, and conditional love. He used my identity not just for financial gain, but as the ultimate expression of his belief that I existed to serve his purposes. I described the psychological impact of discovering my own father had systematically stolen from me while favoring my sister, the shattered trust that would take years to rebuild. The greatest crime wasn't against my finances, but against the parent-child relationship that should have provided protection instead of exploitation. The judge considered my statement alongside dozens of others from former clients before sentencing my father to 15 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for at least 10 years, a sentence that likely meant he would spend his 70s behind bars. As he was led away, my father looked back once. In his expression, I finally saw something I'd sought my entire life. Recognition. Not approval, not love, but simple acknowledgement of my existence as a person separate from his needs and expectations. It wasn't the validation I'd once desperately wanted, but it was the closing of a chapter that allowed me to fully begin the next. 2 years after the dinner that had changed everything, I stood in my new apartment, watching the sun set over the city. The space reflected my evolution: warm colors, comfortable furniture, walls adorned with original art from local artists rather than the status symbols my parents had valued. Professional success had come in unexpected ways. After returning to Preston Financial with Catherine's support, I'd been promoted to partner, the youngest in the firm's history. My client portfolio specialized in helping those recovering from financial abuse and fraud, using my personal experience to create truly protective financial strategies. It established a scholarship program at my alma mater specifically designed for students without family financial support, providing not just tuition assistance, but mentoring through the challenges of building independence without traditional safety nets. It worked through anger, mourning, and finally acceptance that my parents had been incapable of providing the unconditional love I'd sought throughout childhood. I'd learned to recognize and dismantle the patterns established during those formative years, the constant striving for approval, the belief that my worth depended on achievement, the tendency to accept scraps of affection as though they were feasts. Most difficult had been acknowledging that the family I'd wanted had never existed. My parents were exactly who they had shown themselves to be throughout my life. The fantasy that they might someday change the hope that had kept me trying long past reason had to be consciously abandoned. The unexpected letter from Amber arrived 18 months after our father's sentencing. Written on plain stationery rather than the monogrammed paper shed once favored, it arrived without the manipulative timing of previous communications. I've been in therapy for 9 months now. She wrote in handwriting less perfectly controlled than I remembered. My therapist suggested I write to you not to request forgiveness, but to acknowledge truth. The family dynamic was profoundly unhealthy. You were treated unfairly throughout our childhood, while I was placed on a pedestal that ultimately stunted my development. She described her struggle adjusting to life without the financial support and constant validation our parents had provided, the painful recognition of how dependent she'd become on external approval. I'm not asking for reconciliation or even a response. I simply wanted you to know that I'm beginning to understand, and am genuinely sorry for my role in your pain. After careful consideration and discussion with my therapist, I sent a brief reply acknowledging her letter and wishing her well in her healing journey. We had exchanged occasional texts since then, cautious communication without the toxic family system mediating our relationship. The careful reconnection with Amber represented perhaps the most unexpected development in my healing journey. The possibility that away from our parents' influence, some healthy sibling relationship might eventually develop. Professionally, I'd found purpose in helping others recognize and escape family financial abuse. I regularly gave presentations to new financial advisors about warning signs and proper protocols when they suspected clients were being manipulated or exploited by family members. My personal story, shared selectively and only when appropriate, helped others recognize patterns in their own families. Several clients had found courage to establish boundaries with financially abusive parents or siblings after working with me, breaking cycles of exploitation that might otherwise have continued indefinitely. The healing process had taught me that walking away from toxic family wasn't selfish or disloyal, but sometimes necessary for survival. The grief of cutting those ties was real and valid, but so was the freedom that came from establishing a life built on authentic relationships rather than manipulation. I'd learned that the softness my father had declared was my sister's birthright wasn't about luxury or comfort, but about genuine care and support. The true softness in life came from being surrounded by people who valued you for yourself, not for what you could provide or achieve. On that evening, as I prepared to host dinner for my chosen family, Catherine, Raymond, and his wife, several colleagues who had become friends, even a man I'd been dating cautiously for several months, I felt a sense of peace that had once seemed impossible. The table was set with care but without ostentation. The food was chosen for enjoyment rather than status. The conversation would flow without performance or comparison, each person secure in their welcome. This gathering contained everything the family dinners of my childhood had lacked: genuine interest, mutual respect, unconditional acceptance. I had created what my parents could never provide, a place of belonging based on who I was rather than what I achieved. The journey from that devastating dinner statement, "Your sister was born to live soft. Don't like it? Leave," to this moment of genuine peace had been arduous. The cost of standing up against family exploitation had been enormous. Yet the self I discovered through the process was stronger, more authentic, and ultimately happier than the approval-seeking daughter I'd been. I had indeed left as my father suggested, but I hadn't left empty-handed. I had taken my dignity, my integrity, and ultimately my freedom to build a life where softness came from love, freely given, rather than manipulatively withheld. The doorbell rang, announcing my first guests. As I moved to welcome them, I felt gratitude for the painful journey that had led to this moment of genuine connection. I had found softness on my own terms, built by my own hands, among people who truly saw me. What have you experienced with family favoritism? Has anyone faced similar dynamics where they felt constantly compared to siblings or relatives? Share your stories in the comments. You're not alone in these struggles. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Remember, sometimes the family we choose brings more healing than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength in creating boundaries that protect your peace.